Just.
All right, thank you. Welcome to our barbershop quintet. Welcome everyone. Feel free to come to the front. If you're in the back drinking, feel free to come here. Welcome to our, what month is it? January 2025 event for Robotics X Tokyo. I'm Mike Sudano, and today we're hosting a special panel. Forgive me, it was supposed to be bigger and multiply. There were supposed to be 2 different panels today, but we had a few members. Unfortunately, they had to drop out due to personal reasons, scheduling conflicts, visa issues. So what we are doing is having a panel about building a robotics community in Japan. And I've invited a number of friends who are leaders of communities in Japan, be it AI communities or robotics communities or startup podcast communities or venture cafe or somebody really cool who works in space robotics. So we're gonna touch on all these topics that sort of intersect here. And just to talk a little bit about Robotics X Tokyo. So I founded Robotics X Tokyo about 3 years ago with a group of friends out here. And it's based on something I used to do back in Silicon Valley called Bots and Beer as part of Silicon Valley Robotics, where we would get together, buy a bunch of Costco pizzas, buy a bunch of beer, and get together and chat about robotics. We've been doing this now, again, for the past 2 or 3 years, and it's been great, and it's grown crazy organically. We have almost 850 members on Meetup and over 200 on LinkedIn, which is insane. So we do events generally once a month on different topics, so Robotics X blank. And yeah, please find us on Meetup and LinkedIn and join us if you can, invite, share, everything. Personally, I'll just give a quick introduction myself. So I work for Woven by Toyota. Being here tonight, I'm not representing Woven by Toyota, but we might touch on some of the things that they're working on, public things here and there. I'm sure you all saw the CES announcement. I've been involved in robotics for the past too many years, and I've worked for a number of startups and large companies, including Kawasaki, Mitsubishi, and now Toyota. So I guess I'm a registered Sarariman officially. And originally from New York City, then moved to Silicon Valley for 10 years. So I got my fill of startup stuff, and then moved out to Tokyo about 3 or 4 years ago. Feels like 10, 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, love this community, love Japan. Yep, so thank you very much. Ilya, you can take over.
Hi everybody, I'm Ilya, an entrepreneur based here in Tokyo. A little bit about myself, what I'm doing. I've started and failed 2 startups, mainly fintechs, one in Singapore, one in New York and Singapore. One bootstrapped, one raised decent amount of capital. Experience mainly on the engineering side, machine learning and AI. And for the past year since I came back to Japan, I used to live here for 2 years and then moved out to build a startup in Singapore. But for the past year, I've been, as a hobby, I've been building an AI community. We started with around 40 people 13 months ago, and now it's around 2,000 people. Half of them are engineers, 20% product managers, 15% investors, and then academia. It's a pretty cool community. Why I started it, because I haven't found anything happening here a year ago when I came back. So I decided to try and emerge some of the AI talent that Tokyo has, because I believe Tokyo has a huge potential to become an AI hub, around Asia Pacific at least. And that's why I started some events, and then it grew, and now we have 6 subgroups, some startup focused, some more research focused, and yeah. So what I do, I'm trying to connect founders with other founders, with investors, help them some with engineering and so on, while myself figuring out my next startup. That's about it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Hi, I'm Nico. So I actually help out Mike a bit with Robotics X Tokyo, with organizing and finding people for our panels and for our community. So I'm a robotics engineer from Canada. Did my MBA here in Tokyo, and that kind of helped me enter robotics community here. I've worked my entire career in robotics, startups and previously in logistics here in Tokyo, but now working for Astroscale, startup doing robots for space to do what's called on-orbit services. And one of them is deorbiting debris that is basically garbage in orbit, in low Earth orbit, that's polluting the pathways for launching things into space. So I talked a bit in our last event in December about the project that is the phase one of what I'm working on now, which is the imaging of a piece of debris that has been floating in space for about 15 years. So we're the first company to bring back like this type of imaging and this type of data back from space in an autonomous way. And we also demonstrated this, what's called RPO, rendezvous and proximity operations, in a way that was automated using only the sensors on board. And so the next phase is actually to go up there and capture that debris and bring it down, which is what I'm working on now. We're building the robot for that. And I wanted to share maybe some bit of news that's actually very recent. It's fresh, it's today. The Indian Space Agency, ISRO, spent a pair of satellites up in December 30th actually, so not very long ago. And their mission was to send these two satellites up, separate them, and then autonomously redock them. And they had several attempts, but today, this morning, they were able to actually autonomously dock these two satellites. And that's really, really amazing because only 3 other countries prior to India have developed and were successful in doing this technology. So it's US, Russia, China, and now India have the autonomous docking capability. That's very, very important for space industry and robotics. And well, my industry now, which is on-orbit services. Yeah, so thank you for coming, and I'll pass on the mic to Yosuke.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryusuke. I'm the executive director of Venture Café Tokyo. And actually, I'm one of the founding members of CIC Venture Café in Japan. Both are the largest innovation hub and the largest innovation community within this country. And speaking about a little bit of my background, I got basically 3 identities. The one is entrepreneur. I started my career as an entrepreneur in a tech company in a Japanese corporation. And then I founded 2 other nonprofit organizations. So like, you know, I consider myself entrepreneur. And then educator is other aspect of myself. I teach entrepreneurship in a business school. Actually, I have taught entrepreneurship in two different business schools in the past, and even now. So that's educator is another aspect of my background. And then the last, but not least, like the third background aspect of my background is actually that I'm the supporter of every kind of entrepreneurs. For Venture Cafe, actually many those like innovators, entrepreneurs come around. Some of them are actually wanting to start startups, and some of them are just wanting to start nonprofit or things like that. But like regardless what they do, I'm always like try to support everybody. So yeah, I hope like I can contribute to this panel session and then maybe to activities of each of you. So yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So what we're going to do, how we're going to work this is Kaori-san is going to be our moderator, and she's going to take us through a few topics that we're going to chat on with various experiences. And then after that, we're going to do a little bit of audience Q&A and maybe touch on some other news points and things like that. And then we'll wrap up for more networking. So Kaori, take it away. Thank you.
Can I introduce myself a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Don't worry.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, guys. Thank you for coming. So, why Japan has tons of robotics companies, and also AI companies, but why there are no unicorn or decacorn companies in Japan? This question comes from my friends in Silicon Valley, I was asked by many people, why? That's why last year, Christmas Eve, I was just only myself cooked. Oh, I should collaborate with Mike. And then I take it to Mike in Christmas evening. And then he replied, okay, let's do it. Collaborate. That's why we could start this event. Anyway, thank you so much. My name is Kaori Ray, a founder of podcast to interview founders and also people who support the startup ecosystem. If you are a visionary founder or who are looking for ideation, or who want to be an investor or want to join accelerator, you are in the right place. Thank you so much for coming. Anyway, let's get started. 行きましょう。Okay?
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, the first question. So, here, there are 4 amazing community builders, community managers. Most popular community people in Tokyo, actually, right? Robotics, AI salon, and same robotics and space. And also, Venture Café Tokyo has 7 years history, right? Amazing. It's difficult. We could start community easily, but same as startup, it's not short sprint. We have to do marathon, right? And then you guys do every month events. It's amazing. So, okay, first question. What is the current stage and opinion of venture and venture startups?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, venture and startup within Tokyo. Yeah, and especially robotics and AI. Tell us about your opinion.
So I came here about 3 or 4 years ago, and even then, as recent as then, I felt like the startup community sort of had a bad rap within Japan, because generally you were expected to become a sarari person, and work for a large company and work many hours and stay there for many years. And as many of you know, in Silicon Valley, generally you work for a company for 2 or 3 years. You find some place that maybe has a better salary and benefits. You get fed up with where you're working, and then you're kind of expected to leave and move on to greener pastures. And this happens every couple of years. But in Japan, I never got the feeling that that was the same way. Initially, you would just be a worker there for life. And that has definitely changed. Either it's changed out from under me, or I've just come to realize by finding communities like this, like Venture Café Tokyo, that there really is a robust and respected venture community. So that's my opinion, that now it is, looked highly upon.
So when we started our Venture Cafe activity back in 2018, so it's 7-year history that we have. But it was very interesting experience, particularly on the first night. So we are essentially bringing this American innovation culture as we were born in North America, right? Venture Cafe. And then the first night we hosted this kind of a social gathering, but the landscape that we observed was completely different from now. People just wearing black suits just showed up. They just kind of started exchanging business cards to each other, and then no networking or no fruitful conversation happened. But as you say, if you look at right now, Tokyo Thursday gathering everywhere, really this fruitful conversation involving all those global talents, happening. So completely, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's been a huge leap, from the 7 years before.
Did you have beer at that event, that first one?
What's that?
Did you have beer at the first one?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
And
all right.
people thought of it as weird, because like we were kind of giving away the beers for free, just like today, and then everybody just questioned us, hey, how do you do that? You know, why do you do that? You know, so.
Where are you getting your beer money?
Yeah, exactly. People felt a little bit suspicious about Venture Cafe, you know, but.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, I've been here now 7 years, so I guess I arrived when you guys were just starting Venture Cafe. And being on the other end, being on the working side of startups, having my whole career in startups, and most of it here in Japan, actually, it's interesting. You talk about being a salaryman. Some of these startups actually expect you to be a salaryman. They're a startup in the sense that they're venture driven, they've got innovative new technology, but the way they were working was still very, for lack of better words, Japanese. And so they weren't getting that like Silicon Valley kind of feel or that North American or European startup feel. It had its own flavor here. And the first two startups I worked at, they both, in a sense, failed. Not necessarily failed, but they ran out of funding, right? So one of the challenges for sure is finding the right fit for whatever it is you're providing as AI or a robotics company. And I think that's one of the big challenges for any startup. And yeah, and when you look at some of my past work, we always come up on Telexistence, which right now is looking like, you know, they could be one of the next unicorns for Japan. They're doing very interesting things. And the main thing that I would say about robotic startups in terms of reputation in Japan is this work culture. So how do we shift into this mindset where we're building a community, not just this community, but you know, your workplace is also part of that community. And even now as we speak, we don't see companies engaging in our community, right? We're seeing individuals from companies, but not the company itself engaging and saying, hey, we want to be part of Robotics X Tokyo. We want to be part of Tokyo AI. So I think that's one of the big challenges for our community here is how do we get the companies engaged, not just individuals?
That actually resonates a lot because I'm looking to partner with one or two larger companies, traditional companies now. And for example, if I talk to Ilya and I say, hey, let's do an event. Okay, you're like, yeah, we'll do something. But these other companies, I message them and then I get a very formal message back. And then it goes to them and they say, well, we're considering it. We need to talk to the proper people and determine this. So there's definitely that chain of command and a little bit more overhead bureaucracy, for lack of a better term.
And maybe even some paperwork.
And maybe some paper. Yes, there is paperwork that I've had to do. Yes. You didn't make me do paperwork. Thank you.
Yeah, there is a lot on this point about corporate partners. First, I'll start from how I see the ecosystem here, the startup and venture and so on. I first came to Japan, moved here in 2020. And since then, it's always been just on the rise, right? I haven't experienced before. And I know a lot of people burnt out of being 15 years in Japan trying to build here because, well, it's still hard, right? But if you look at this in the past 4 years, there's more funding, there are more people. So I've always seen as a positive trend where this ecosystem is going. Obviously, there are still lots of difficulties, like finding the talent. There's a shortage of 50% of machine learning talent, for instance. For every 2 positions, you can only find 1 person, right? At the same time, it's very hard to attract this talent because salaries are still low, even though increasing. Equity valuation is still low. How do you attract early engineers? If there is not enough capital, how do you promise them that equity? Like the one example, Palantir, when they were a smaller company out of San Francisco, they were paying up below market, right? But there was this dream that you can make some more on the equity side, but you also can build something cool. Here, very hard apart, some companies in the AI space, robotics and space. So it's a very positive trend. Difficulties that I see, and I've seen them already 4 years ago or 5 years ago, and I'm still seeing them. And it's pretty obvious here, like where are the Japanese? I find it very difficult. We have 2,000 people in my community, only 35% are Japanese. It's definitely a language barrier, but we have also some events that are in Japanese. Even if I don't speak any, we still have somebody who helps in Japanese, right? And it's just a different culture. To cover a similar example to you, we organized one for the Japanese startuppers and one for international startuppers. After the international one, everybody stays, just talks, have drinks. After the Japanese one, half leaves right away. No questions, nothing. It's improving, so we're trying to make this trick where we create two separate communities, and without telling them, we merge them. So slowly. So yeah, and on the corporate partners, super tough. I think there is a good strategy. You just get them to come to your events. For instance, we didn't have any big companies knowing about us, and then we invited Panasonic and Syngenta, for instance, two big conglomerates, right? And they came, and now Sompo reached out because they want to present something. Toyota Tsusho, right? Fujitsu. So it's really show them a little bit of this value, get them in somehow, and it just took a year. So, but still possible, right?
So you're saying that peer pressure works? Like almost like FOMO for companies where if you show that there's an established, the risk is less. So Japan, traditional Japanese companies, very risk averse. If you show that the risk is less by other companies are doing it, the dominoes may fall.
Right. And it requires some tricks, right? Once you organize an event at JETRO and somehow you're sponsored by JETRO, right? It gives you a lot of credibility and so on and so forth. Then initially these are tricks and then they come. So it's like this, I don't like the term, it's a fake it till you make it kind of strategy. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Interesting. So, okay, as a community manager, are you looking for like sponsor to help your organization currently?
So, yes, kind of passively, not actively. Our community, especially compared to Ilya's, I feel like is still growing. And we've been extremely blessed that just when we started out, somehow I connected with Urishihara-san, Takuo-san, and they offered me to, present here, have an event here. So we've been like absolutely blessed to be able to do events here and not really need the funding, because we've sort of been able to merge with Thursday Gathering. So we've had an automatic venue, automatic audience, automatic audio-visual stuff, and refreshments. I think as we grow, we will probably want to explore other places as well. For example, we're talking here and there with Tokyo Innovation Base as one location. And maybe Lewagen also, Sasha, I've spoken to. So if we do events at other places, yes, we definitely want to have corporate sponsors for things like refreshments, and even just offering up the space would be great. And of course, what we could bring is a whole bunch of robotics interest and talent, international. And yeah, if you're interested, for sure, reach out to me. It's not something that we're actively after, especially because I am so busy and there's only a few of us managing it. Also, if you want to help out with the organizing, please get in touch with me for sure. But yeah.
A question. So we were talking about this growing ecosystem and startups and so on. A trend I've noticed in the past year, since I came back, there are more and more international foreign entrepreneurs after exits or after the MBAs and so on, moving here to start in Japan. And they're not just weebs, right? Not just nerds. They want to be based here for operational cost arbitrage, for obviously lifestyle and infrastructure availability. And almost every week I'm meeting 2-3 new founders that are trying to move here. And sometimes manage to match them with some of these other founders. So have you noticed this trend as well? People coming to you and really trying to show that they want to build here? There are obviously huge difficulties in doing that from the Japanese side, but have you seen this trend yourself as well? Maybe you too?
Yeah, I have. But I'm wondering why, when the yen is so weak compared to the dollar, does it make sense for them to come here when they could be building something? Maybe it's offset by the fact that maybe it's easier to get funding here. I don't know the
You
reason.
raise in US dollars, you spend it.
That is true, and then it's like monopoly money when you come over here. But
So like you're talking about the trends of the inbound of those entrepreneurs. Yeah, well, first of all, like we have to, we can't generalize all those like inbound trends, like from outside of Japan. For example, if you look at the East Asia, like Taiwan, Korea, we sense there is a more and more growing number or interest of those like startups about to Japan's market. And if you look at the population of Korea, it's less than 60 million population, and then Taiwan it's less than 30 million population. And then now things are crazy all around the world. But if you look at Japan, the country risk is very low. If you look at the societal side of Japan, very stable. So relatively, comparably, Japan's being very attractive market for Korean and Taiwanese startups, and the cultural difference is very small. From all those like a Western country, the startups from Western countries or the other regions, right? And the other side is cultural asset is very strong in Japan. If you look at the quality of life, I know like if you work for a Japanese corporation, it's so bad. But like otherwise, like if you like how do you say, the living costs, the quality of food or those like infrastructure, they are very good in Japan. So I guess like they are making like Japan a sort of a appealing destination. And then one more thing that I can mention is maybe cultural asset that Japan has. For example, anime or those like subculture stuff is actually making also Japan is very attractive. So maybe Japan is not a super the best destination for business or starting venture or startup, right? But like still like desirable place, I guess. That's maybe that could explain maybe that trend. I think, yeah.
Maybe something you mentioned earlier as well, in terms of labor shortage, right? For every AI or robotics job, there's actually, there's one for two. And that might be an interesting trend as well, where we're seeing recruitment having a much stronger presence. I find stronger presence here in Japan than maybe in Silicon Valley or even in Canada or Europe, is that matching up the engineers with the jobs has, and in my experience as well, always going through recruitment. And maybe that's where there's an opportunity to see, you come here to Japan, you get the workers from, let's say, Silicon Valley at a discount, and you're doing the same work. That's possibly one of the benefits of coming and making your startup here. And yeah, I definitely agree. Like the cultural aspect, I think, is very attractive in that sense. But at some point, if you get stuck in like this Japanese style working, then of course you want to move on. And having maybe like foreign startup in Japan, you won't have that same working subculture. I think that's something that might be interesting. And then you have people who do want to stay or who don't want to go to the other startup because they know, their culture is more black.
But like can I share the
Yes, please do.
yeah, like some introduction. So now ecosystem is a really trending term all around the world. And then I just wanted to share some document that I created because almost every week we accept a delegation from of startups or students, from all around the world, and then I have an opportunity to present about the current status of Tokyo's ecosystem. So I just wanted to share some fundamental information around the startup ecosystem of Japan. So Japan's innovation ecosystem overview is something like this. So fortunately, every year, organization called Startup Genome, they publish the ranking of these like a startup ecosystem, and then Tokyo is ranked actually 10th last year, 2024. And then, so like meaning Tokyo is performing pretty well. Then like tier one, tier two cities like Silicon Valley, New York, London, Tel Aviv, LA, Boston. These guys are always the same, but tier three cities are like somewhat kind of ups and downs, changing, fluctuating. But in general, Asian cities are following all those like 6 cities on top, in the tier one and tier two, and then followed by those like European cities. So this is a sort of a current situation, status, what's happening, or the ranking of ecosystem all around the world. And Tokyo is pretty doing great. And then if you take a more close look about the performance of Tokyo, so basically the methodology that the startup genome created is based on these like 5 categories: performance, funding, talent, and experience, and market research knowledge, right? So these are the more like how you say the detailed information or explanation about those like categories, right? And then basically talent and experience, market reach, and knowledge are the measurement about the very fundamental business capability. As you can see, Japan's got now the 3rd largest GDP. Of course, Japan's got a very strong foundation for business. So Tokyo's got a very strong score for those 3 categories. But actually, Tokyo is lagging behind in the category of performance and funding. And these categories are actually indicators for the actual startup ecosystem performance. So meaning Tokyo's been still in very immature stage compared to these like cities like Silicon Valley, Boston, or New York, or London. So with that, so I just wanted to share this like a very fundamental information, and then like in association with robotics or AI, actually Japan government, Tokyo's government wanting to kind of really improve this situation, and particularly deep tech, AI, including robotics, are the focal point of to emphasize. And then actually now the government's budget has been, always like, it's getting bigger every year, and then actually rushing like those money floating into those like universities or research institutes. So obviously, like maybe these communities are kind of addressing the how to say, the really important points for Japan. But on the other hand, one more thing, like on the other hand, Japan's or Tokyo has been kind of how to say needs more improvement, particularly to engage or involve global talents. So as you said, the cultural asset is great, and then many people come around. But I see other trend that those global talents leave Japan after about like a few years, right? 5 years, 6 years. So Japan's being like failing to kind of keep those like wonderful global talents reside in Japan like more longer term, right? So that's just because maybe Japan's or Tokyo's ecosystem has been still very immature stage. We just still need to learn, improve to learn how to kind of accommodate, how to live together, how to leverage all those global talents, you know, to create the impact to the society. So that's I just wanted to share that.
That's
thing.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question about, like you mentioned, performance and funding are really the indicators for
Yeah.
the strength of startups. So what do you think is missing in Japan in terms of, let's say, performance or funding? Either.
That I don't know.
Guess that's the fundamental question.
Right. Well,
we want to know, right?
Okay. I know a little bit about it. So the Go Global is a national slogan right now, even for Japanese Japan startup ecosystem. That's because traditionally or conventionally, Japanese startups has this tendency to look to only to domestic market, but again, 120 million population is relatively bigger, but it's not it's not super big. So if you only focus on Japan's market, that probably the ceiling of the revenue that you can possibly get is pretty limited, and that would actually goes to the market cap of your company, right? Affect the market cap of your company. So the simple answer for that problem is actually you need to expand the market you target outside Japan. So that's the kind of direction that like Japan's ecosystem look into, or the narrative that Japan's ecosystem shares right now. So many people are pushing Japanese startups or those startups who are born in Japan, to go outside, So that's one thing.
If I can add one thing here, Japan has this interesting thing, this closest racism. They say Japan to global, what actually they mean is Japanese to global. Like we have lots of foreign entrepreneurs that are trying to build here, raise and so on, and they can't find funding because, it's riskier. Communication-wise, lots of VCs here, why should they care for you to build outside if they can IPO for 200, 300 million here? So it's this Japan to global should actually be real Japan to global, not just Japanese to global. And that's something I'm pretty upset with. But we'll change it somehow by getting investors that are not Japanese VCs, maybe. I don't know.
I completely agree. So diversity, people talk about diversity around, but I interpret diversity in a different way, maybe from the other people does. Meaning, for example, if you look at the Silicon Valley, it's actually, I know, if you're familiar with Dragon Ball, there is a thing called the Tenkaichi Butokai, So Silicon Valley is something like a Tenkaichi Butokai, best and brightest talents, they come around to Silicon Valley. And then they try to embrace diversity. Just that's because they want those bright, best and brightest talents to perform, the best, right? So diversity is very important. They need to kind of create the environment that, that can accommodate all those global talents to perform well. And then you're right, so Japan's hasn't been unable to create, or even they don't realize that thing, they think diversity is important because the other countries say diversity is important, things like that. That's the kind of understanding about the situation. And so I guess like what you just said is a very important part. After all, ecosystem consists of each individual, regardless where they're from. So we need to actually, if you want to really create a more productive and a more fruitful ecosystem, you have to create an environment where all those, each individual, again, regardless where they're from, perform pretty well, feel comfortable, foster sort of attachment to the ecosystem, So yeah, so let's do that together.
Yeah, yeah. No, just some example, like nobody in the Japanese ecosystem knows that Notion founders were building out of Kyoto, or Payday founder is not Japanese either. Nobody is really inviting him to any of these events. Another interesting thing, one founder out of SF exited for 2 billion in biotech companies, building now an AI in anime for the past 4 years. Half team is here, half a team is in San Francisco, completely outside of the community as well, ridiculously. But it's improving, yeah. So I'm seeing, thanks to the work of like you specifically, for the past 7-8 years, it's been bringing more attention, and hopefully we can do even more. I'm always trying to get more Japanese into the ecosystem to really collaborate all together. So I think within the next 10 years we'll manage, maybe slightly earlier, but I'm patient.
Yeah, I think we still have a little bit more time. Maybe specifically about the robotics, maybe?
Okay, or like each organization.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, last question. Tell us about your like community's milestone in 2025. Do you have some news or a special event, or what do you want to challenge?
So I would like to continue to third or fourth, something like that. Yeah, thank you. I would like to continue to help to overcome some of the barriers that Ilya spoke about. This sort of social exclusion, I'll call it, for a little bit nicer term, but yeah, it's where there's sort of a there are many things about Japan where it's just easy to live and exist. It's safe, it's clean, but there are many things for foreigners specifically where it's very grating. There's a lot of social conformity. There's a lot of kuki o yomu, so reading the air, that foreigners are generally not expected to follow, but if they don't, then they're part of the out group. There's in group and out group, and this extends to things like funding. This extends to things like social situations and whatnot. So I want to bring in more diversity to Japan, technically, and further than that, rather than just bringing it in and trying to force it through, I want to sort of somehow, with help from other communities, prove to Japan culturally and socioeconomically that diversity is a good thing, and people aren't necessarily just because they weren't born here doesn't mean they're sort of any more suspicious or less capable of being funded, or less capable of like integrating with the culture, essentially. Because I know personally, I've gone through ups and downs living in Japan, of 1 week being like super fed up with things and just like, oh, what is this? I just went, and I'm from New York. I'm an Italian guy from New York City, so I'm like, I have that streak inside of me of contrarian, of just like, I'm walking here, and then I go the other way of just like, no, it's a really nice place, it's really good, but I want more diversity in the tech world, in the society as a whole, So if I can help sort of bring that in and all kinds of diversity, generally when we, not to get, completely off on a tangent, but generally when Japan Inc. talks about diversity, they just think gender diversity, that's it, just, male and female. But there's so much more diversity. There's so much more to the word diversity, in terms of ability, national origin, religion, everything. So if we can help to grow that community and make a good impact, and then also have those sort of corporate sponsors come in and feel like they're welcome there as well, and make those sort of person-to-person connections, that would be, I wouldn't say that's a milestone, that's more of an aspiration. Milestone would be hold an event per month and don't have a nervous breakdown with all the other stressors I have. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, the first objective, not to burn down and just close the whole thing, because sometimes it's really upsetting. You stay up until 4 a.m. doing all this stuff, and then you get not help. I mean, we don't really need much help, but some people take it a little bit in the wrong way, I think, all this community building. And they don't actually see the potential of Japan as an emergent tech ecosystem, so they don't like people are trying to make a hub here, because it doesn't make sense. But main objective for me this year for the community is, there are three. One is to start Tokyo AI. Tokyo AI is a name community. I'm not very creative, so a boring name. Tokyo AI Angel Syndicate. We have really interesting founders dropping by, and I would like to get that opportunity to invest in them very early. And luckily, I see some of them here as well. Second, to start a Tokyo AI Hacker House. So once a month, we'll meet for a whole day to hack together, do some research, talk about, some papers, do some projects, maybe, get some hackathons as well. And then third one, get a little bit of progress towards discussions of building an AI hub, like an AI campus, because I've talked to Tatemono, Heiwa, I know Tokyo and so on, Mitsubishi Estate. They all have a certain understanding of how do you build a certain hub, a certain community, and I think they're all wrong. So my objective is to find a physical space where all of these 2,000, 4,000 people, hopefully, by the end of the year, will be able to drop by once in a while to just really be based there and create this serendipity that I think is really emerging here. So that's my objective for the Tokyo AI community. Not AI Salon, Tokyo AI, right, Tokyo.
Yeah, so maybe adding to what Mike is saying, and a bit of what we've talked about today, I think the interesting thing for me would be to try and see how we get companies a bit more involved with our organization, getting buy-in from companies to say, hey, let's collaborate and do an event. Let's talk about what we're doing in-house. We want to present what we're doing to the world, to the community. And I think we don't get much of that here. So that would be great to be able to find something like that for this year, once, maybe twice a year.
Right. Venture Cafe Tokyo would like to contribute to the, to globalizing more and more Tokyo ecosystem, more and more. And then there are actually many things planned for this year, but the things that highlights the Q1 is something called the Global Gathering. Sorry, I'm going to be a little bit kind of hard selling, but yeah, please save the calendar. On February 27th, we are going to do a big global innovation community conference together with these engine men and people. I should say people. So the idea is so I didn't introduce Venture Cafe properly, but now we operate in 16 countries all around the world. So really the idea is to put together all those a Venture Cafe global network in Tokyo, meaning we're gonna invite all those staff of Venture Cafe each location, and also the entrepreneurs, speakers, innovators from all the like locations as well. So anyway, it's a big global innovation community conference. We got 4 pillars to do this. First pillar is something called Pitch to Tokyo. It's a big pitch competition. We already completed the regional round in each location. We selected the entrepreneur from each location, and then we're gonna do the final round on February 27th. And also we're gonna have 2 tracks for panel sessions, like a keynote speeches or things like that. We actually collaborate with the, these people as well.
Yeah, and we'll be.
No, I mean from the diversity perspective, I just felt like I shouldn't say gentleman.
Well, we'll also have mass robotics from Cambridge
Right, yeah, mass
coming
robotics,
over.
yeah.
So we'll be doing sort of a bigger robotics event as well.
Yeah, and then most probably, if I can disclose, we're gonna have a guest from England as well. There's an organization called ARIA, which is equivalent to DAPA, so most probably, and then Taiwanese Taiwanese government associated organization is now planning to create a big delegation for the event. So like there will be many things involved for this gathering. And then Fabian here would do like a startup career event as well. So anyway, many things will happen globally and locally. We anticipate about 1,000 participants will join us. So yeah, if you have any availability, yeah, please join us. It should be very fun anyway. And then we, of course, serve beers. That's very important. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so if you want, we can do a Q&A. I wanted to, Ray, while we still have like 5 minutes before we do the Q&A, I wanted to ask something.
You forgot one thing. So
yes,
our objectives we explained, but what's Kaori's objective for her community?
Of course, I keep forgetting.
Kaori now has
what is your objective for
a
this?
YouTube channel with 15,000.
Thank you so much. Okay, so as Ryusuke mentioned, so in terms of encouraging and improving startup ecosystem in Japan, we had better to accept like diversity, right? Yeah, I totally agree. Because of mostly Japanese people, including me, we have perfection. That's why it's difficult to accept. Just do it, like agile method. So, that's why I really love to talk with such incredible like founders, community builders. Anyway, so the reason why I started to my podcast, AI Founders Mindset, it's YouTube. We published over 120 episodes, and then subscribers are 17,000 人, 17K, thanks free. Anyway, so my milestone in this year is so getting successful secret from successful founders, or I want to get like what can I say, secret from investors. How did you choose this company? How did you get funds from this, like Andreessen Horowitz, like that? And then collecting data, and then we can share it so that, we can improve together, right? That's why it's my mission, and then I want to accelerate.
And then you'll write a book, right?
Yeah.
You'll get the book deal.
Yeah, my hobby is journaling. So last week, I attended a Thursday gathering. And then, I couldn't stop speakers talk. Yeah, it was so fun. Thank you so much for,
Yeah, so we can do a Q&A now, and since this is, generally under the guise of a robotics meetup, we would love, technical questions, and we also mentioned a little bit about talking about the intersection of hardware, software, AI, robotics in the US and in Japan. So specifically, if you have questions about that, that's more than welcome. Do we have another microphone by any chance that we can hand out to the audience by any chance? Okay, yes. Okay, so if that's okay. So does anybody have any questions for any of us on anything? Yes. Thank you, Kawari-san.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I have a question. I'm a control engineer from robotics, AI background and everything. I was wondering about the startup ecosystem and everything. Do you see cases happening that big OEMs, because Japan is known for great manufacturing, great machines all across. I don't know, in my industry, construction, robotics, well, Komatsu is there, Tadano is there. These are amazing global industries, but they are slow or they have a lot of bureaucracy, but they are sitting at a position that they can be like Tesla. They can vertically scale and get the software and everything. So the question is, do you see these OEMs investing in startups or sort of have some acquisitions, acquire those startups? So, because one way is sort of go to the, I don't know, do an IPO and gets a lot of money, become a unicorn, but the other way is to, well, get bought. So do you see that happening in the current ecosystem or, yeah?
Yeah, so if it's okay, I have,
Well, maybe
I could talk to some of the, yeah.
one comment on it is that, yeah, it is happening.
Yeah.
It happens a bit quietly here. It's not as extravagant M&A as you would see in other countries. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe it's the funding aspect of the ecosystem. But, I don't know, what do you see?
Can I share some numbers? I agree with Nicholas. It's happening, but very slightly. And I just wanted to share some numbers that highlight the current situation. Well, the numbers are actually coming from a little bit outdated. It might be outdated, but these are the numbers from 2019. So it's about 6 years ago. So things are a little bit improving, but I understand like overall the situation is not that much different from the past. So, but again, these are the numbers from 2019 about exits that was made by like startups in the United States and in Japan. As you can see, the like exits was realized in Japan, mostly like through IPO, but US it's the opposite. Like most of the exits was made by M&A. So this is the situation, and then the reason why I don't know that can be ascribed to this like a lifetime, this corporate culture of Japan, where you are granted to work for the same company like forever, and that tend to create a sort of a thing called the not made in here thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but not made in here. Like they are not prone to, like they are not they are not accustomed to like accepting, something outside, outside the company. So maybe that can be culture problem. But on the other hand, good sign is all those Komatsu and those big corporations belongs to Keidanren. And then Japan can be said one of the most successful social, the communist countries, So the government and all those public companies are aligned very together through an organization called Keidanren. So there's a structure. The government here, and there are like those public companies, including Komatsu. So in order to coordinate the government and all those private companies, there is a single organization called Keidanren. And then these guys are very important. And Keidanren recently said they're gonna really take it seriously, boosting up the startup ecosystem or helping out the startup ecosystems. So things are again changing, moving slowly, And in fact, 2024, the number of M&A has been increasing, you know. So yeah, so I hope that will help. So finger crossed. There should be the future should be bright, you know. Yeah.
So actually, I didn't know this side of it. So from my experience, I've noticed I've noticed some larger companies doing pilot programs, for example, maybe Komatsu or other construction companies, maybe partnering with startups to do these pilot programs, but I don't know if they've necessarily gone ahead with merging. But what I have noticed is, for example, speaking from Toyota or even Kawasaki or Honda Research Institute, these companies sort of forming their own research institutes with talent from overseas, and again, doing everything sort of in-house, but with this international spin on it, to kind of make themselves more modern, attractive, I guess. But it's interesting that the data is there, that it has been happening. So, cool.
One thing I'd be interested to see, I don't know if you have a slide for that, but like, yeah, maybe not. So, of course, there's these M&As and these IPOs happening, but I'm sure Japan's valuations tend to be lower than those happening in the US.
There's a slide for that.
Again, so that can be ascribed to the immaturity of Japan's ecosystem. First, if you want to create a company with a higher market cap, you need somebody who can manage the company in the right direction. So we should have more and more business professionals, you know, who can run actually businesses. So for example, if now, again, as I said, the Japanese government is really pushing universities or all those research institutes to create the startups. Particularly, they are pushing all those like researchers or engineers or, you know, all those people. But they are technical people, and usually they don't have much. They don't have much knowledge about the management side. So. And then most of those startups founded by those like researchers, engineers, they face the difficulties in management side. So, you know, so that's one thing. And the second thing is again, is already I mentioned, is about the globalization. Again, if you want to create a more impactful startup with the higher market cap, you know, the first of all, you know, you need, you know, you need to create a startup with more revenue. The reason because, like, reason, okay, I'm screwing up, but if you wanna, so basically, market cap is calculated two things based on two things. First thing is like ROE. So like how ROA or ROE, like, you know, it's like the productivity of revenue creation. And then the second is actually the expectation for the future growth. So these two indicators or two factors are theoretically creating deciding the market cap of a company. So, you know, meaning like you have to have a future growth. It doesn't have to be very clear, but you have to say, hey, we're gonna look, we're gonna try to sell these products in this like a market of about this amount, this amount, right? And then, so yeah, those are the things. I guess like sorry, like I'm screwing up.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I hope I'm.
Did we answer your question?
Sense.
Okay, all right.
Short addition there. I'm seeing more CVCs investing from OEM side into startups, but also some of them are creating joint ventures. Like Komatsu, for instance, created one called EarthBrain with Sony Semiconductor and so on. So that seems interesting. But otherwise, in Japan, CVCs are pretty strong, and Toyota Gozei, for instance, also one OEM on a certain automotive side, they're investing actively. So to answer the question of the guy that's now distracted and not paying attention anymore, there is a good trend in that, right? Yeah.
Awesome. We got one more up there. I can go do it. No, you sure? Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, excellent session, guys. Thanks very much. So I'm Evan, co-founder of Kimaru AI. This year marks the year that I will have spent half of my life in Japan. After more than 20 years of trying to help Japan with digital transformation, this is the most optimistic I've ever been about Japan's future. And it's mostly because of this convergence of where Japan excels, areas like robotics, with emergent AI. This is going to be the year of deployed agentic AI. So the reason for this optimism, for me, mostly comes from the positive steps that the government is taking in terms of legislation. And I wondered, maybe if you could help explain a little bit about that. The Kishida administration put forward the goal of being the most AI-friendly country in the world. Now, we've had an administration change, but I think those policies will take hold. Does anybody have a little bit of inside information on those policies? Can you help explain why Japan is such an AI-friendly country?
I think, first of all, culturally speaking, in Japan, since the beginning of their work on neural nets in the end of 60s, they've been getting in the direction where they work with this future intelligence. Rather than creating it to substitute humans, it was always in synchrony, let's say, with synergies. And that would mean AI friendly, in my view. Next year, we'll have the future 5-year plan, right? So this last 5 years, starting in 2021 up until, well, this year, that's when we decided, okay, let's do Society 5.0, is where they wanted to create more systems that are friendly to the autonomy, to AI, and so on. And the direction they're trying to take now to be more AI friendly is to attract more talent, right? Try to manage, because I've seen some numbers about the IP, lots of patents. Japan is #1 country in the world in terms of patents per patenting organization. But the commercialization struggles, and some of the reasons are, you don't teach business to your PhD students, and that's one of the policies that are being introduced. Make it compulsory to study business courses for PhD students. And there are several of these kind of directions. That's how they try to be AI friendly, right? First of all, by accepting it and using it in daily life, and not just seeing it as a menace, like you see in everywhere outside of Japan, for instance. EU regulating quite heavily and actively, while Japan is a little bit more open, right? They're letting other companies to build without over-regulating. So in that sense, it's AI friendly. So talent, regulation, and hopefully availability of capital as well, because they've been investing a lot into at least getting back on track on the semiconductor industry, data centers, and so on. But also getting GIC, for instance, to allocate more capital into foreign VCs to invest into Japan and into local startups. So I think that's what it means to be more AI friendly, really. Talent, commercialization of research and investment.
I think another aspect, and you mentioned earlier, is this cultural asset, this social acceptance of robotics or AI. And it comes even in manga from decades ago, right? When you look at the consumption of media, you see kids watching robots and they play with robots, whereas in North American or Western media, robots are bad. They're destroying things. Here in Japan, robots are helping you. They're time traveling. They're, doing things for you here. And yeah, socially, I think it's always been culturally more accepted to have robots and AI as part of your everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And I think also in terms of influx of talent as well, maybe people who are attracted by that versus Terminator, speaking from, not from a government standpoint, but maybe some companies that are working with government. Speaking from Toyota, before this I was part of Toyota Research Institute, and they were founded specifically to bring together that concept of great Silicon Valley culture, code, and more traditional manufacturing. So I think that extra influx of talent where these companies are hiring more internationally is hopefully going to continue and then open up. And then maybe that'll pressure the government more so, having a greater share of international workers. But in terms of specific policies, I think Ilya probably knows the most about it. Thanks. Anyway, yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Nalin. Ilya, thanks for having me here. Just because today was about robotics, and I got a sense that we didn't get to talk about robotics as much as we would have liked. So maybe just a few things I want to offer as food for thought, if that's okay. I'm an investor in companies. I've got 7 companies in robotics. None of them are in Japan. I was born and raised in Japan. I've lived here for most of my life. Japan is my home. But it hurts me that none of my investee companies are Japanese companies. Some of them are active and operating in Japan, but just some data points for you. I think the biggest robotics companies I can think of are Fanuc, Yaskawa, and maybe, who's the other one? Daifuku. And I'm going to say Daifuku because we don't think of them as robotics, but they're actually a robotics company. I did some research on the numbers. Daifuku revenue is $1 billion. It's not that huge. Yaskawa, $1 billion. Fanuc, $1.2 billion. Valuation, these are all public companies. Daifuku, $8 billion in revenue, in valuation, right? So it's an 8x on their revenue. Yaskawa, $8 billion. Fanuc, 28. So it's a pretty good, good multiple on their revenue. But I think what's happening right now in Japan is the role of the robotics startups, to your question. The role is different. The role is Yaskawa, Fanuc, Daifuku, they don't want change because they've got a great business. And we have come here and we're kind of messing things up for them, right? But they know they need us. So they are slowly working with us, including my 7 companies. Some of them yes, some of them no. They're not investing in us because they don't want to give us money to grow. But they do want to work with us. And so, to your question, we have to find ways to work with them, not through capital collaboration, but ecosystem collaboration. So if I look at the 7 companies, and I'm going to highlight one more where I'm not an investor, I'm going to say the name, Mujin. Most of you know about Mujin, right? Mujin's raised about 80 million. They took that money back. So they raised money from UTEC, they took it back, then they raised more money, and they're going through this cycle right now. So I'm very curious to see where this will go. I think there is a role for startups here. That role is primarily around bringing vision systems, control systems, AI. It's basically bringing software, cloud, and intelligence to the hardware that the traditional Japanese players have made. And if we draw that line clearly, and we present ourselves not as a threat, but as a potential advantage for them, they will embrace us a little bit more. So I just wanted to share that thinking. Toyota has, by the way, acquired Vanderlande, has acquired Bastian Solutions. So on the logistics side, there are lots of acquisitions they've done, but not of startups, but of established companies in the robotics space. And they're consolidating in their own little way. That's Toyota LNF primarily, but it is happening. I just wanted to share that.
No, that's fantastic. And, you know, especially coming from Toyota Research Institute, again, where it was founded, where those lines were drawn, like we're taking in talent from Silicon Valley because you know modern systems like Confluence and Jira, you know GitHub, you're using modern coding techniques. And yet, thinking back to my time at Kawasaki, they were still using floppy disks, essentially. And their robot control boxes didn't have USB ports on them. They were using their own coding language from the 80s still. And even though companies like Toyota have tried to draw that line, it's still like, as much as they might want to work across lines technically, that's okay, but then there's still this big cultural difference that pushes those two forces apart. So even within Woven, we've seen this where if the company is at any one time more made up of Japanese nationals from traditional companies, the whole company culture will shift one way, versus if they hire more internationally, the whole company culture will shift another way. And there's always this sort of struggle over compensation, benefits, social programs. So I think even though technically, if all other barriers are the same and taken down, technically I believe that there is a great place where people can work together. But for better or worse, it's within this framework of you're in a corporate culture, there is a social culture around it that provides all this friction against it. But technically, I think you're absolutely right, and it's been tried. Yeah, like I've been a part of a few of these, and I want to see more robotics companies embrace both of those things better. But yes. Yes. Sure.
This is just sharing some good news. But of those 7 companies, I put money in them 2, 3, 4 years ago, maybe 5 in some of them. Last year was a great year, right? And 6 of them, I have notes here, 6 of them actually did Series A raises last year. Again, none of them are in Japan. One of them is very active in Japan, in fact, has Japanese investors. But they have raised between 5 at the lowest and 10 million in Series A just in 2024. So that is good news that, you know, these startups are not being like thrown by the roadside. They're actually getting money and getting traction, getting customers, getting talent, and moving into Japan as well.
That's great news then, Nalin. It means that soon you'll have enough liquidity to invest in more Japanese startups on the robotics side. And we have several that are here. Like one example, yesterday we had a pitch from Integral AI. It's 2 ex-Google guys from San Francisco. One of them moved here. And they have clients like Denso and so on. No investors from Japan, but clients, yeah, definitely. So it's a good point that they're ready to work with you. Maybe not invest in the beginning, at least not in initial rounds. So one difficulty for these startups is hardware it requires a lot of capital, and that's less available in Japan right now, or well, the risks are not being taken. So that's one. And second, I'm writing a report on the Japanese AI ecosystem, and the first chapter, I've just published it last Monday. If you go there, on the last page, there are a couple of charts, and they show how much Japan has not missed in investing in robotics especially. So Japan just lost their leadership in the past 15 years in robotics. They're probably 8th or 9th in terms of academic output in robotics, which is, well, ridiculously low. If you have such a low output in academia, how can you build these kind of startups? Because it's deep tech, right? So naturally then goes to China, Singapore, US, and so on.
So I'm wondering what happens if Japanese traditional companies are very resistant to, I guess, working across the aisle and embracing new technology or embracing foreign workers. What happens in a few years when, you know, the age pyramid, of course, inverted in Japan, you know, aging society, less people to take care of them and to do work. What happens when they have to adapt because they don't have enough people to do this work? And why hasn't that happened 10 years ago? Like, why isn't there more of that push? I would love to see more of that, like more urgency around that specifically and other large issues that we're facing, climate disaster, et cetera. Yeah. So more food for thought, I guess. Like, you know, we need that. I definitely want to talk afterwards too. I'm very interested in which companies, if would definitely love to chat. Anybody else for, yes. Sorry, two, yeah, 1 and 2.
Hi. First, thank you for organizing such an amazing event and giving valuable insights. And first, as a Japanese, Kaori-san said, perfection. Japanese people is perfection. I agree. But that is not really bad, I think. For defense, I think bureaucratic, inefficient, I think, processes, that is not great, but perfection itself is not bad. So Michael-san said, yeah, reading atmosphere is important. So my question is, what skill, because this, I think, topic was building community. So I want to ask, what skills or qualities or trait are you looking for in this community, and also the sponsored corporation? That is my question.
So for sponsoring corporations, I'd like for them to be, you know, generally in the industry. They don't have to be directly doing robotics, but for sure I'd like them to be in some sort of deep tech kind of related to robotics. In terms of, you know, Kukyo Yomu, something like this. You know, for people who want to help out, I'd love to just have people who are very kind of communicative and who can like take on organizing an event just by themselves, because there's sometimes where I just have to like hand it off. So that's been, you know, really good. People who are very motivated to kind of come together and be able to work independently. I guess just like any other company would be hiring, that would be great to have volunteers like Nico and other members. Yep.
In my community, well, in terms of sponsors, whoever has the money, that would be great. In terms of participants, I tend to be very difficult when vetting the community, because I care about the quality to form, so to create this really strong core from where to expand, because once you have a strong core, other people want to join. Like sometimes some events I see that somebody doesn't fit, I don't get them in. So if it's particularly, you know, advanced topic in reinforcement learning, and you are a back-end engineer that well does, I don't know, DevOps maybe you don't really fit in that particular crowd. But once the strong core is formed, once people see the quality, I think it becomes a little bit easier. So what I look for is for people to join if they can actually both contribute but also take something from this, and not just, you know, randomly join for some drinks or to know somebody, right? But really get that quality out in terms of engineering, product research, also investments. So Nalin, you're always welcome. Don't ignore us, even if you're not an engineer. Hope that answers your question.
Nice. I think we're actually running up against time. Is that okay? We'll move on to the last question. Okay. That's good. No, it's fine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know you guys are running out of time, so I'll try to keep it fast. Thanks for a very interesting talk. It was really fascinating, actually, to hear you talk about how you would try and support the robotics industry and try and incorporate a bigger network and more you know, communication between companies, foreign and Japanese, especially for like a hypothetical founder such as myself. I found it to be quite optimistic, but I love that because we're engineers and we're always optimistic, I would say. So my question is this: I just want to ask, where would you say you've got to in terms of your goal, your overall goal of trying to incorporate this kind of a community among the existing robotics industry in Japan? How far do you think you've come along that path so far? And how long do you think it will take, to take where we are right now to, a place where Japan is sort of like the Silicon Valley sort of thing, a kind of community?
So since he mentioned robotics, I'll jump in first. So it's already way beyond what I thought it would be. Like I was okay with gathering like 20 people and just hanging out and talking about robotics here and there to build community. So it's way beyond where I'd imagine. In terms of where I'd like to take it, it's very TBD. So corporate sponsors would be great. Maybe officially like trademarking a logo and the name and things like that. T-shirts, and then using it to actually build community and do something positive. So I thought of maybe turning our LinkedIn page into a jobs board, and actually using it specifically for searching talent in Japan and internationally, specifically in robotics, which hasn't really been directly focused on. It's been more the industries that sort of touch that. So if we could, form some sort of job search for job seekers and companies, that would be great if I could, make that happen with the community to actually, get something going.
It's a very good question, and I'm personally failing in that, getting the community really inserted into the local ecosystem. For that, recently we started reverse pitches with bigger companies like Panasonic, as I mentioned earlier, where it helps for them to come and see the quality that's there, and slowly, allows them to also meet some of these startups and start collaborate, hopefully, maybe even invest with their CVCs. But it's pretty tough because they're not used to this activity. So whenever I hear from people visiting our community, they all say, "Oh, we didn't even know there was such an active event or such an active community." But then maybe they came once, maybe twice, and that's about it. So what I would like to do this year is to create this relationship a little bit stronger. So where we do maybe more reverse pitches, where these companies come and show, these are the AI projects we are working on, please help us with them. Right? And then they start poaching people from this community, they start investing even more. And that will create a synergy between industry, so the let's say corporate ecosystem, and our, let's say, more commercial ecosystem. Or was that the kind of question? So how do we see the whole structure working together with the community, or was it? Right. It doesn't exist, so that's a problem, right?
Yeah, and I think that the other part of the question you mentioned was, how long do you think it's going to take? Yeah, I don't know, but Ilya, you touched on it a bit earlier, I think, is that we need to reach this critical mass in terms of the core of the culture of our ecosystem. And then it maintains itself, right? And then you're not putting as much effort to say, this is what this ecosystem should be like. It just is. Right? And that's the first big effort. And even like Mike's saying, 3 years ago when we started, it was 20 guys in a pub. We were going to the pub every month, and then we started coming here. So, yeah, we're taking these steps every year, every month, sometimes getting these improvements that are really building the core of our culture and our ecosystem.
Yeah, until they can't ignore you anymore. For instance, organize something with Panasonic and Sompo reached out, right? As you were saying, they see somebody else there, they can't miss out. And that slowly creates a bit of FOMO on their end, and hopefully creates more synergies. So I'm quite positive about where it's going.
Yusuke, do you want to take us out with a final thought?
I don't know, if I'm a right person to answer your question, because we are not managing robotics community. We're managing very generic community. But so our mission is basically connecting innovators to make things happen. We are trying to make resources available for everybody through hosting this kind of social gatherings where really everybody can participate. And for now, I feel that our activities are desired by people. We see every week about 300 to 400 people attend, our Thursday gathering. So as far as like we are desired, we would like to continue our activities. And in order to continue our activities, I always trying to find a right spot where we can create a value for like all of you, and also for sponsors who basically does give us money. Actually, to run the Tokyo only, so we now run in 7 locations in Japan, but only run Tokyo we need 1億円, a million, 1億円, not anymore, 600K USD or something like that. It's a lot of money. So yeah. So like, yeah, I'll try to go as far as we can go, But, and then like, this is a community where to create with everybody. Huh? This is a community to be created by everybody, to be created by everybody. So please participate. If you have a great idea, please join us. The stage is yours. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I want to thank our moderator, Kaori-san. I want to thank Ilya, Nico, Ryusuke. Thank you. And thank you to everyone at Venture Café Tokyo for having us. So just as a reminder, after this, we'll network and hang out and chat for about 30 more minutes, and then they will close down the venue at 9 o'clock, and they'll kick everybody out. And just keep in mind that next month, February 27th, we'll be joining the global gathering, and we'll be doing more robotic stuff, more international stuff, definitely more technical, more robotic stuff like that, especially because we'll be partnering with Mass Robotics. So please stay tuned for that. Feel free to chat. I'll be around for a little bit longer, not too much longer. I have to go home. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin. Definitely look us up on Meetup and LinkedIn. And thank you for coming, everyone who may have been watching online. Yep, have a great night. Thank you. See ya.
Can I hook you up on LinkedIn and I can then ask you all the questions?
Okay, ありがとうございました。ね、疲れちゃいましたね。
じゃあ集合写真撮りましょうか。
あ、はい。ゆうすけ。
はい、ポーズ。